Some months you just look at that new release list and want to say,
everything!
These are my favorite metal albums of July, and we're starting with Dead Heat with Endless Torment. Time for some more killer California crossover thrash going fast and hard in the vein of Power Trip. Right from the top, Endless Torment serves up both shredding riffs and serious attitude. That one snarl towards the end alone carries as much venom as most bands take an entire song to demonstrate. Then you've still got 4 more ragers to contend with, like the D-beat-filled Smite Thee, or fun use of Vibra Slap on the intro of Eyes of the Rhea. Tears of the Wolf brings a bit more classic heavy metal flavor, and finally Hard Reset sets up a false sense of security with its chill acoustic intro before torching everything to the ground. It may be short, but man does it leave me ready for more. And hey, if you want to keep those vibes going, get a load of Pizza Death with Reign of the Antichrist. I had a handful of people in the comments and on Discord recommend this album to me, and as far as pizza-loving crossover thrash goes, this is easily the most fun you can have outside of Municipal Waste.
Pizza time.
20 tracks, all under 2 minutes or less, and every single one of them bringing equal parts headbanging and humor. These guys dig deep too. Outside of puns like replacing Antichrist with Anticrust, we've got some real classic references from my 90s childhood like Avoid the Noid.
So avoid the Noid. Domino's Pizza delivers.
The next logical step in my mind for this band is a combo concept album and comic book with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Next up is Rannoch with Conflagrations. Our first taste of progressive this month with this death metal monolith featuring drummer Dan Presland of Neobliviscaris. Definitely getting some vibes from the likes of Rivers of Nile and even earlier Gojira. And that latter comparison holds given the longer track lengths here like Prism Black, Conflagrations, and the nearly 17-minute closer Threnody to a Dying Star. Great mix here of more simplistic, hypnotic grooves with complex and technical arrangements. Not to mention some really epic, atmospheric moments as with the title track. These transitions make for a consistently engaging experience that really takes you on a journey. Then there's Flesh Vessel with Yearning, Promethean Fates Sealed. This avant-garde band does it all: death metal, black metal, progressive, doom, jazz, and so much more. And between this eclectic mix of styles, the lengthier compositions, and additional instrumentation, I'd probably most recommend them to fans of Dreadnought. There's really no nailing down any single label to this album, so best to just strap in and enjoy the ride. Yes, there are seriously imposing snarls and waves of distortion at times on par with the likes of Portal, but what really kept me the most engaged were the more varied stretches of acoustic guitars, viola, piano, flute, ocarina, harp, Hammond organ, glockenspiel, and trumpet. Not something I would listen to every day, but this is easily the most impressive album on the list this month. Next up is The Gorge with Mechanical Fiction. Made up of 4 jazz musicians who share a clear love of everything from botch and intronaut to Mastodon and Animals as leaders, The Gorge is as hard-hitting as it is intensely progressive. Many of these riffs call back to albums like Leviathan and Blood Mountain, but with vocals 10 times as vicious. Furthermore, the pacing of the songwriting here is masterclass, with a constant ebb and flow of the more mid-paced introspective moments and tidal waves of mathy catharsis as with the excellent track Presence. You're never more than a few seconds away from the next exciting transition while also knowing you're in good hands when it comes to putting substance over style. Totally infectious stuff that had me endlessly grooving along to the equally killer bass and drums. Then one a lot of people have been talking about this month, we have Black Braid with Black Braid 2. Now, being real, I was a bit underwhelmed by this Native American black metal project's EP when everyone else was raving about it. But with this first full length, I think it's managed to eliminate basically all of my previous criticisms. This is a stunning display of melodic black metal, deeply infused with a sense of emotionally stirring reverence. Take elements of Uada and Panopticon, but then add an entirely new regional and historical context behind it. Tracks like The Spirit Returns and The Wolf That Guides the Hunter's Hand nearly bring me to tears without ever having to look at a single lyric. The guitars alone have such power behind them and never fail to linger in my brain long afterwards. Bonus points for the sick cover of one of my favorite Bathory tracks, too. We've got plenty more albums to go, but if you're enjoying the video, remember to hit the like button and continue to comment as we go along your own favorites from this month. But next up we have Chamber with A Love to Kill For. The longtime fans out there know that the only thing I love more than a hard-hitting metalcore album with a 2000s vibe is one with a mathcore twist. And Chamber is perhaps the perfect encapsulation of that band. I've been vibing to this Nashville crew since their early EPs, and seeing them rise in the ranks to Pure Noise Records in just 5 years has been cool to see from the sidelines. Honestly, as much as I enjoyed Cost of Sacrifice, I think that A Love to Kill For maybe blows that album completely out of the water. Shifting rhythms, chaotic riffs, and vitriolic vocals conjure the classic spirit of Botch and so many more bands from that era. And even for you metalcore haters out there, no clean singing, no big sappy melodic sections, just undiluted pit-worthy aggression and some of the sickest drumming in the game.
Is that good enough for you?
Then we have Caligram with Position Momentum. Another band I've been following for a bit now, since 2016's Demimonde. Back then I referred to them as a Blackened hardcore band, but these days I'd put their more atmospheric approach alongside the likes of Gaerea or maybe Numenorian. They still have D-beat moments here and there, but the emphasis is now completely different, as with my personal favorite, Ostrenania. It's also a very dynamic record, this track finding its way into stretches of minimalist doom complemented by the mournful wail of trumpet. Meanwhile, some of the riffs on Sol Dolore reminded me of Darkest Hour with a dissection twist. Both beautiful and aggressive, haunting and harrowing, this is an album that fans of post-black metal are not going to want to miss. Then there's Thra with Forged in Chaotic Spew. Hey, look at that. I even got a little doom metal in this month.
Well, this is unexpected.
Thra is a punishing combo of sludge and death metal, just perfect for their sweltering Arizona climate. Think Primitive Man and Inter Arma under the hot Mojave sun. Tracks like Primordial Engorgement even seem to conjure imagery of heat haze just from the sound of the guitar. The vocals are utterly savage, comparable to the likes of Lord Mantis and Portrayal of Guilt. And like a desert sunset, the ambient closer Terror Vessel will chill you to the bone. Next up is Nuclear Dudes with Boss Blades. Nuclear Dudes is a solo project mixing extreme metal, synth prog, power violence, and industrial noise to answer the question, what would a collab between Carcass and Gary Newman sound like? I might also throw in some comparisons to the likes of Genghis Tron and The Armed for good measure. Whatever you call it, this is sure to be one of the weirder things you hear this month. From straight meat grinders to sprawling synth-infused post-metal escapades, guaranteed your first listen is going to keep you on your toes. I could see fans of everything from mathcore to experimental metal finding something to enjoy with this one. No time like the present to broaden your musical horizons. Then we have Virge with Panspermic Warlords. This is yet another project from the mind of Ungfell Swiss multi-instrumentalist Menetekel, and it's a vast cosmic black metal with an atmosphere that seems to stretch into eternity. With a concept based on the titular theory of panspermia, which assumes that all life in the universe spawned from the same origin. Here, the warcast of alien species have traversed space in cryosleep for millions of years in giant spaceships, planting their seed of life on uninhabitable planets with the sole purpose of inhabiting as much of the universe as possible.
If we can't get them out, we'll breed them out.
It's a bleak vision of life, to be sure, and one perfectly captured in the grim and futile sounding tones of the music. But now one of the bigger releases on the list this month, we have Cavalera with Morbid Visions. Two for two this month on great remakes, and I think that this one is even better than Voivod's shoutout. And the most obvious difference from the original right here is in terms of atmosphere, with the original sounding a bit more evil, but the new version sounding angry as fuck, delivering a bit more energy with that entombed HM2 buzzsaw guitar sound. Max also really gives his all in his vocal performance, especially on Show Me the Wrath, and I love the new backup vocal additions on War. It's clear that this was a labor of love, even paying attention to the little details like the church bells on Crucifixion and maintaining the same basic imagery of the cover art. You can never replace the original, but this maintains the same spirit while giving it a modern twist that's easily in my top 5 thrash albums of the year so far. Then there's Better Lovers with God Made Me an Animal. Two of my favorite bands going all the way back to high school collide here with members of Every Time I Die and Greg Puciato of the Dillinger Escape Plan. Oh, and also Will Putney of Fit for an Autopsy for good measure. What an incredible lineup that would have made my 18-year-old self's head explode. And while I'm still a little sad at the prospect that we'll never get another record from maybe either of these great bands, this collaboration definitely softens the blow in many ways, offering the best of both worlds. The instrumentation carries forward that unmistakable trademark fusion of mathcore and dirtbag southern rock, while Greg both rages and croons like it's still the 2010s. Personal favorites here, 30 Under 13 and Become So Small. And since that was only 4 tracks, I'm gonna sneak in another little bonus EP here in Salem Trials with Nocturnal Creation. I'm a sucker for most projects that sound even remotely like the Black Dahlia Murder, so add this EP to that list. Basically, if the Black Dahlia Murder went deathcore and collided with the cleansing era Suicide Silence, this is probably what they would sound like. Based on their Bandcamp page, they still seem to be relatively new, with just 1 full length and some singles going back to 2019, so I'm really excited to watch how they develop from here. But speaking of deathcore, we have Signs of the Swarm with Amongst the Low and Empty. Signs of the Swarm is a band I've always liked, but never loved. But with Amongst the Low and Empty, they've finally dropped something that only gets better with each listen. I couldn't put it down. They've gone a long way here in giving each track its own personality, thanks to earworm riffs, as well as killer scream-along hooks like Echelon's We Are Serpents, Drowning in a Sea of Serpents. Or this one from Tower of Torsos. Not to mention each line is delivered with brutal vocal gymnastics that easily go toe-to-toe with Will Ramos. Add some electronic elements and a few melodic moments like Dream Killer, and it feels like these guys took some solid notes from Darko. Taking on guitarist Carl Schultz of Great American Ghost and applying input from Joshua Travis and Cameron Loesch of Amur and the Tony Danza Tap Dance Extravaganza and Born of Osiris respectively seems to have paid dividends. Also, honestly, way better than the Crown Magnetar album, in my opinion. Then we have the Zenith Passage with Datalesium. Featuring former members of the Faceless and other incredibly talented bands, the Zenith Passage scorched my face off with 2016's Solipsist. Now, 7 years later, we're finally getting a second dose of modern technical death metal mastery. This is another dizzying display of arthritis-inducing proficiency that goes hand in hand with the likes of Archspire, Alkaloid, and Surreption. Algorithmic Salvation and Lexicontagion alone are enough to snap my head right off my neck with the contortions that they compel me to perform. But as I'm always careful to say about bands like this, the technical showcase never supersedes the songwriting. In fact, the second half gets increasingly more progressive with synth-driven passages and clean vocals reminiscent of Between the Buried and Me. Before my final pick, shout out to the new Mutoid Man as well, which I'm looking forward to, but as of the time of this recording, I still haven't had a chance to hear it. But my favorite metal album of July goes to Locust with Infidel. Funny that I was just making a groove metal albums list and lamenting how few good new bands you see in this genre now, and along comes this London band sounding like a mix of Lamb of God and Gaerea. Their approach really covers the full range here with tracks like Guiltless absolutely shredding up the thrash metal influences, while also venturing into some massive atmosphere-driven choruses as with Parasitic. But mostly, this thing is riffs upon riffs, seeming without end. I expected to look up the two guitar players and find a lengthy resume of great bands, but it seems instead we've got two more relatively new up-and-comers to watch moving forwards. And the drumming is just as sick, courtesy of Euler Moraeus of the Voynich Code. Completely unexpected and very welcome as someone who was in deep during the heyday of groove metal. Y'all check out this playlist for more of my favorite metal albums of the year so far, both by month and overall. And again, let me know down in the comments what were your favorites. But that'll do it for now. Flight of Icarus signing off. I will see you in the trenches.